Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. So I've got a great mate of mine on, Mark. I'll introduce you to Mark in a moment. But first I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm calling in from. I'm here in Baldwin Q, in the land of the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to pay respect to their elders past, present, and I always like to acknowledge the young people coming through because they're going to be our future warriors. They're going to take culture into our future. But I've got a special guest on today, Mark. Hey Mark, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, mate?
I'm fine. Hey, for people that don't know you, who are you? Where are you from?
My name is Mark Nannup. I'm Yamatji and Noongar, and I grew up in Meekatharra and Port Hedland in Western Australia.
Nice. Now, if people don't exactly know where Meekatharra is, I've been to Meekatharra a couple of times, so I know where it is, but where exactly is it?
So it's about 800 kilometres out of Perth into the desert, pretty much. Population about 900 people, and I think Meekatharra was made famous through Rodney Rood or someone back in the day.
Yes, okay.
Oh, usually that's the two other things that come after when you say you're from Meekatharra.
Yeah.
I guess my generation onwards.
Yeah. Now, you went to school there?
I did. So half my family lived in, well, all the family lived in Meekatharra, but most of the work was coming out of Port Hedland. So we're always back and forth between Port Hedland and Meekatharra, living in Port Hedland and then moving back to Meekatharra, then back to Port Hedland, back to Meekatharra.
Yeah. So what was school like for you growing up?
I think I went to about 9 different schools.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it was, you're kind of a different person in each one.
Yeah.
Just who you are in those different environments every few years. But school was, to be honest, it was terrible.
Yeah.
You're the only one with blonde hair and blue eyes, and that makes you a target.
Yeah.
It's look, kids can be cruel, and I just think at that moment in time, that's just the way kids are. Don't hold it against anyone. But it definitely taught me how to have a thick skin, I guess.
Yeah. So after school, I want to ask you a different question. At school, how much Aboriginal studies did you learn at school? Did they teach anything at all?
I think in high school, no, really. Like year 11 and 12, I don't remember learning anything. I remember going to Pundulmurra, and they have a library there, and they had all those movies of Women of the Sun.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's how I was like, oh my God, like that happened to us, But I think I went to a school called Tartan, run by Christian Brothers. They're slowly closing down because of their historical allegations.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome when I was there because I think that school catered towards kids who were, short attention spans, causing trouble in class. So because it was an equine agricultural college, instead of, you did your English and maths and woodwork and metalwork, and that was about it. The rest was shearing sheep, driving tractors, ploughing fields, riding horses. So it really, snapped a lot of bad kids out of, being bad because they kind of found something that they were really interested in. And Christian Brothers had employed Aboriginal staff and really got in, celebrated NAIDOC week. I was there for like year 8, 9 and 10. And I think in that period it was just for NAIDOC week really. It wasn't really embedded.
No. And you ended up finishing year 12?
I did.
Yeah.
My mother said if you don't complete year 12 you can find a house to live.
Okay.
She's dead serious. And I actually did pull out for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And that was during your work experience you do. And it was for welding. And I told the guys, I was like, can I just work here full time? I don't want to go back to school. And they're like, yeah, sure. And it gave me a dose of reality, which is waking up at 4, 5 in the morning and going to work, doing a 12-hour shift, and then not coming home till 7 at night. And the school actually rang my mum and said, I think you should really encourage Mark to come back to complete year 12. And mum was like, do you want to go back to year 12? And in my head, I was like, yes. Yeah, I'm not ready for this early morning, afternoon stuff.
Yeah. And now from year 12, is that when you came down to Melbourne after that? Or no?
When I did year 12. And I stayed in Hedland I was a second year Boilermaker.
Okay.
Because I had the gift of being a really good welder. And but I soon realized that really wasn't for me. And so I packed up my stuff, sold my car within the space of a week, and moved to Perth when I was about 18 and a half, I think.
Yeah.
And got a job at Crown Resorts doing my Certificate 3 in hospitality.
Oh, wow.
And I was there for a year, and that pretty much solidified the excitement of event management and festivals that was soon to happen down the track. But through that process, I got to hang out with all the billionaires and millionaires of the world. I got to hang out with Pink for 2 weeks as her personal assistant when she was doing her funhouse tour. And as an 18-year-old, that is,
pretty amazing.
Incredible.
Wow. Wow. Is she as nice as they say she is?
Hell yeah. I was privy to one of the conversations, and little do people know, world tour is crazy because you're celebrating or you're going to a concert here in Perth, but the conversations behind the scene they're having is they've got a whole scaffold crew in Japan, another scaffold crew in France, another scaffold crew in Japan, somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And they're always 3 cities ahead. And so it's a massive production. And all she rocks up on, the day before the performance to do a rehearsal and then move again.
Yeah.
The performance and then move again. And so one of her shows, I think it was Japan, the production manager, and that was saying, look, we're going to have to cancel it. I don't think you're going to be able to make it in time. You're going to be exhausted. And she was like, no, my fans have paid for these tickets. I'm going to push through. I'll make sure that happens. And, I was just there, and she was like, Mark, what's some of the good places to visit around Perth? And I was giving her, maybe you could go here, go there, check this out. And this was before she had her kids, and it was great. And I showed her how to use a Brewster machine for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And showed her how to make a coffee. And she's like, guys, who wants a cappuccino or a mocha? I'll make
She was making the whole crew, everyone cups of coffee. Good on her.
If she had burnt her face with the milk or something, I would have been out.
Yeah. Well, at least we know if she doesn't have a job, she's got a backup skill of coffee making. Is she any good at making the coffee, though?
Not everyone's good on that.
Okay, at least you can make one.
Yeah, it's nice.
So a question I've got, what was it like coming from a small country town going to the big city? I wouldn't say big city. For me, Perth is not a big city, but it is a big city compared to Meekatharra.
Yeah, it is.
And Hedland.
To be honest, it was easy for me. I was always quite imaginative. I always saw myself as a city kid stuck in the country. I've always wanted to live in the city. I was always like, I want to be around, the glitz and the glam. And I had, bright lights in my head. So for me to fulfill it was just like, yes, it's happening.
Awesome. So why did you end up leaving Perth?
There's a concept called in social emotional wellbeing called spirit and spirituality, which is that I'm of. It varies from group to group, person to person, but I always had, I guess, a close relationship with older people, and so being brought up or having conversations with these old people and just seeing how they worked and operated. You wondered why they would do certain things they do, but you'd see at the end why they did it. Like there was information. And so I think I just accepted that concept and gave myself over to what that is, being guided by ancestors. And that's just what had happened. It's not voices in your head. It's like a gravitational pull. And so experiencing that, it was like, you need to go to Melbourne, you need to go to Sydney to be immersed in, is the whole LGBTI scene, and it was just party central. And it's like, that was my understanding, was just like, I just want to party in the biggest city in the country. And so it was that gravitational pull that took me there, and nearly homeless. But the one thing I realized was being homeless didn't scare me. Not knowing where I was going to get my next meal from, that was the scary part. Because I think at that age, because you had worked from mining and you come from all this money, you do have a ego where you're like, that's too low for me. I'm not going to do that. That's, delusion. But, beggars can't be choosers. And so on my Centrelink form, I happened to speak to a lady who was going through my Centrelink, and I told her I came here, I wanted to pursue theatre, film and screen. And she's like, oh, back in India, I was an actor, and yada, yada, yada. And she really believed in what I was doing. And so she, I might get in trouble for this, but this was like, 20 years ago. She forged a document for me so I could get paid the next day, which allowed me to get an apartment the next day.
Oh, okay, yep.
And I was like, thank you. And that sort of set me up there in Sydney. And then after 6 months, that gravitational pull was like, go to Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I went to Melbourne, found my crew, found my artists, and ended up staying there for the next 8 years.
Yeah. So you were studying at VCA. What were you studying at VCA?
I studied acting for theatre, film and screen.
Yep.
People think it's just acting. It's really not. It's, directing, it's writing, it's set design, it's making sure that actors come out of here and they have more skills than acting. They know how to operate a camera, they know how to operate lighting, they know how to be a stage manager, all these. So it wasn't just this concept of acting.
Yep. So what did you like the most? What do you like the most?
In acting?
Acting, writing, behind the scenes?
I think for me, the scary part was like, I want to be an actor. And then you get in, and then they're like, now you need to memorize all this stuff. And you're like,
well, you can't just ad-lib the script.
Yeah, you can't just if the script is like, you're saying this, but you're walking this way, and then you turn around and you say this word, you're like, shit. All right. Okay. That's probably. But at the same time as studying, I was working about six jobs, 2 committees, on top of full-time study. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was just to maintain a lifestyle?
I think it's just, if you want to put your hand up and say you want to advocate, you want to be a part of a social movement around Aboriginal rights, and you have good values and morals, be prepared to have a lot of people put you on things or to get you to do things. In the moment and the time, you feel, I'm really a part of the community and I'm doing all this stuff, but burnout is real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, another job that you had, because I've been doing a little bit of research, is been at the SBS doing narrating.
Yeah, so that was one of the things I got out of acting. That was my favorite, actually. Yeah. Narration. I have always been fascinated by voices and how they're able to be utilized so people listen, because I know in the community, if you have a voice where people listen, and I think if yeah, I really wanted to hone in on that. And I've done like, TV commercials and whatnot. It's fun and it's great. But the hardest part is finding a space where you can maintain your muscles for narration. Otherwise, if you don't strengthen those muscles or do those breathing techniques and whatnot, it sort of goes away. And I kind of hear it right now. My voice is not the best.
So I'm not going to get you to narrate anything.
All good.
Look, anytime I hear about narration, my brain goes to David Attenborough, who can make grass growing or paint drying sound the most exciting things ever.
Right? Yes. He is a big influence, that fella. And also Dame Edna.
Yep.
Was my big inspiration, because I'm like, how do you do that? How do you have the gift of the gab where you can just, I think in one of his documentaries, he says, my characters, as an actor, you just wind them up and you just let them go. Yeah. You don't know coming out of their mouth or anything. It's almost like he forgets, or he doesn't know what they're doing, because that's the character. It's not Barry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something I find fascinating. And I think I've experienced stuff like that through clowning. Is like leaving your body, and it's like you're sitting in the audience watching this person do crazy, silly things.
Yeah. What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years?
That's a tough one. At the moment, not too sure, but I'm pretty involved in the social emotional wellbeing mental health space for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Yeah.
I'm a committee member for AIPA, Australian Indigenous Psychologists Association.
Yeah.
We facilitate the national conferences around Aboriginal mental health, suicide prevention. My master's is on how we can better implement social emotional wellbeing in the performing arts industry, utilising Aboriginal methodologies and frameworks.
Awesome.
That's kind of what I get employed as, and I love it. Like, it's incredible that you get to study something that brings you happiness and joy. Obviously, you've got to be very careful dealing with mental health and people and how they look at you or perceive you. And I'm happy that I have this breadth of industry knowledge over the last 20 years to really support performers.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I've been doing work with the Arts Centre down here, and when Aboriginal artists sometimes come to Melbourne to perform, they are away from home, they're off country, they can't just jump back and go home sometimes. Sometimes the characters that they play or the storylines are really hard and full on cultural experiences that they may not have experienced but their family have. And I've been asked to go in a few times as a mental health accredited social worker and an Aboriginal mental health specialist, to actually have yarns with some of the actors around like what the script actually involves and how not to actually take it on board in their time off, but keep them safe while they're not on country and they're down here in Melbourne. And I don't think people realise mental health actually does affect actors. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
totally.
It's you see them as like mini celebrities that shouldn't have any problems.
Right. And I think that's, I'm not studying a master's because I think I'm smart enough. I'm studying a master's because I'm frustrated at an industry that doesn't take care of its people. And so that's the gap I saw. That, like you said, 90% of our plays are trauma, displacement, racism, DV, colonization. For our mob to get up and produce and direct and act in these stories, it is a very full-on experience because it's your mob, it's your family story, it's your cousin's family story. Yeah. And what I saw was no one was there to catch these actors once they got off that stage. because it's a very lonely environment, and then to deal with that play, if it deals with colonization, violence, that does something to the actor, and I know of Aboriginal actors who've had to go to an asylum because the production was too much.
Yeah. And that's sad, because there should be support behind it, but I don't understand. I understand that what you're studying is so important, because it hasn't been looked at before, if that makes sense.
No, I think a lot of our mob that go through the, wanting to be in the performing arts world, they either want to direct, be in front of the screen or camera or on the stage, and no one's, and it's a beast of an industry, it's like a steamroller. It's just full steam ahead. And I hate to say it, but a lot of people want to be in that position of, I won the Emmy, I won the Logie, I got all these accolades, and sometimes it can be at the detriment of your mental health.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy, I guess, with my upbringing and what I know and the journey I've been on. It's not about the stage anymore. It's more about how can I take care of the people on the stage, because I feel like some of the productions I've been in, I've hit the ceiling around what's fulfilled me as an actor. The play that sort of made me stop really achieving in this industry and really look at other aspects of it was a production called HECATE, which was an entire Shakespeare production in the Noongar language with no English.
Yeah.
And so that was the Macbeth play. And for me, I was like, I feel full. Like I don't feel I need to aspire to be on these big stages anymore. I think I'm good.
Yeah. Now, if a young Aboriginal person came to you and said, hey, I want to get into acting or into theatre, what would you recommend they do?
I'm kind of responsible for young people pulling out of uni. Because uni is not going to run away, but your youth will run away.
Yeah.
And I think young people need to fulfill that burning flame of travel, party. Some people don't even have that. They just want to go straight to uni. They know what they want, but I think a lot of mob, and we see it all the time, like they would rather go and fulfill their youth first. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I would highly encourage it, because you have conversations with people, you do all these things that you normally wouldn't do. I mean, we shouldn't be pressuring kids to go into a 9-to-5 job straight away. Like all my nieces, I went to uni at 28 and I loved every day of it, because that's just, I'd done all my partying, I'd done all my traveling. And I was like, cool, I'm ready for uni now. And I excelled hugely because I wasn't going to the parties. I was there for my education, and I was like, cool, I'm happy to help my fellow classmates, but not be a part of what's also the drama of uni.
Yeah.
And yeah, so depending on where you're at in life, if you have that burning desire to travel and see the world, do it. Uni's not going to run away.
Yeah.
And I think acting as well, young people need to understand that there's also within the industry a timeline. So if you're getting into it young, you see it time and time again how actors are constantly trying to make themselves relevant, judging by their age. You're no longer young, but you're sort of in the middle, so you can be a teenager. Yeah. And then the juiciest characters to play are older characters.
Yeah.
That's where the gold's at. So I think if you're being an actor and you're young, do it, but also be mindful that the good part happens when you're older, the good roles.
Yeah. I was talking to an actress once that said that there's a few characters that you go through. You can, if you start really young, you're the kid at school, and sometimes you've got a famous actor playing a parent, possibly. And then you've gone into maybe you're the professional lawyer or the professional, and then all of a sudden you're someone's mum. And and then from someone's mum, you become someone's aunt, and the next minute you're someone's grandma.
Yeah.
And that's the progress. But they said playing the grandma was much more fun than playing the lawyer or the young teenager.
Yeah. I think because you have a lot more world experience that you can bring things to the screen or to the table where you're just so honed in on depth. You're not honed in on what people might think you should do or be, because you've had that life experience. And then, you know, people watching, as an actor, that's like all you do most of the time you go anywhere or everywhere. You're people watching because it's just interesting to see how other people live their lives and how those characters, you know, little bits of them might benefit a character down the track.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, while you're at VCA, I know you're also the LGBTIQ plus coordinator, mentor, advisory person. I want to ask a question, and that is, I know that I used to work at university. I used to be the disability coordinator, and I've worked in student careers, and I've been the Aboriginal diversity officer. Do you think the universities are getting better, and educational facilities are getting better at looking after LGBTIQ plus students and staff?
Maybe not staff from what I experienced.
Okay.
Students, yes. We had a great time. I chucked on karaoke nights, got in, you know, people like Ro Allen to come in and speak about what's happening. Ro Allen was the commissioner for Victoria, and to come in to, you know, provide resources around, you know, people who might be struggling. And yeah, I found it to be very supportive in that regard. But I know teachers and lecturers in that world, it's still, they have a hard time because there's still this male, pale and stale attitude.
Yeah.
That's how it was put to me.
Yeah. I want to talk a bit about cultural safety as well. In the industry, in acting industry, but also at university industry, do Aboriginal people feel culturally safe? And what makes somebody feel culturally safe? What would make you feel culturally safe?
I think it's incredibly difficult considering we're 3% of the population and we go into places where they've never met a black fella. You know, how do you be safe? And it's a work in progress, but I always assume that every place I walk into, there are two topics you're going to have to handle or deal with, which is racists or an outside looking in view of Aboriginal people. So I think, you know, there's this concept of safe space and brave space, which is in my research. And a safe space is, you know, calling out those things like racism, sexism, discrimination, homophobia, and those qualities not being tolerated in that space. That's, you know, if you have these qualities, please leave. But a brave space is where you're supported by that same group, but in a space that doesn't feel culturally safe, but you're encouraged to be brave in your actions and how you go about it, knowing that you have people around you. And it's usually those unsafe spaces.
Yeah. Now, I know for a lot of mob, we're still trying to get our voice heard, and we need good allies to actually help us.
Yeah, and there are some really staunch allies out there. I've come across a few. I'm like,
and I was going to ask you, what makes a person a good ally?
I think my best experience with an ally, I was sitting down having breakfast, and the girl next to me, ally, she had an army background, but she was doing something, a master's, and I forgot what it was. And then there was somebody that was sitting on the other side of the table, and they were a gardener, and they were reading the paper, and as soon as he said something about Aboriginal people, she just jumped in there. Like, it was just like, I'd never seen it before, but this ally just jumped in and she's like, yeah, well, what's the problem? You know, and she was just bombarding him with question after question about the way he saw the world, and like how the way he was thinking was very ignorant and, you know, somewhat racist. But I was like, I didn't have to say anything. And I loved it. And I was like, I walked away, you know, going, well, you guys have a really good day. Because I had to go to uni and they were still at it. But I was like, holy shit. And, you know, other allies, a mob who've been, so I've got a friend, Dr. Danielle Hersky. She is Czech and Australian. And she's been around community so long that she gets it. Yeah. When we worked together, she was like, you know, we created a resource, which was how to teach contemporary Indigenous theatre in the classroom. And she was like, Mark, I'll do most of the writing because that's my thing. Like, I'm all across the curriculum, all that stuff. And I was like, thank you. Like, to me, that's, and having conversations with other people where it's like, you know, allies did the heavy lifting in this process and they're acknowledged for that. Yeah. And I think that speaks volumes to allyship, you know, where it's like, thank you. They really invested in us, especially around the writing component, and then having us just go over it as a, you know, check and edit kind of person.
Yeah. Another question I've got is that there's lots of films coming out, and they always start to now have a lot of LGBTIQ characters or non-binary characters, and you hear mixed reviews from people going, are we becoming too woke, or are we really showing the true representation of people and individuals in society? Where do you kind of sit in storytelling where characters and I think what I'm trying to get at here is, I think I like watching shows, but I sometimes I watch the show and I go, I think this character is just really tokenistic, or they don't really have a storyline. I'm not exactly sure why they need to point out that they're gay, but then I've seen other stories where the storyline is so significant that you go, this is fantastic. I work with kids just like this. This is fantastic to watch. Where do people draw that line?
Well, it's the industry and its involvement in that community. We have that same experience as blackfellas. We're like, well, what's the point of this character? Is it just to tick the box because the playwright was like, I need to incorporate an Aboriginal person, you know? And I always use the dressmaker with Kate as an example, because I watched it and I was like, where's the Aboriginal people? And then by the end of it, I was like, we didn't need to be in that. Just was this little bubble of people doing their thing in this little town. And I was like, I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite movies. And I was like, yeah, I feel like if they would have added it, I don't know where it would have went, but I love the fact that it was just in this little town, and I didn't feel like we needed to be in that. Those sort of scenarios. Yeah. But I think, it's becoming very evident. It's a lot of conversations within the industry about, are we ticking boxes, or is this a genuine conversation that people are having, or is this a genuine relationship? And when I was 18, nearly homeless, the one group of people that took me in and made sure that I always had a feed was the trans community. Yeah. Because they know what it's like to be disowned, kicked out of home, be homeless, resort to prostitution to pay the bills. People think that, it's a lot to deal with, I think, as a trans person, but I haven't necessarily been involved in the LGBTI stuff for a while now. I've been busy with,
lots of other things
stuff. But I'm still there, I guess. I'm there as an advocate. I'm just not heavily involved anymore because I'm not sure. I think that part of growing up and having bigger opportunities present themselves, and you're focused on that because you want to, we're living in a very turbulent time at the moment.
Yeah. Look, I was in Sydney a couple of years ago, and I went to one of the Sydney Theatre Company's productions, and it was of a play called Playing Betty Bow. And I read the book at school, and I really loved it, and I really loved the performance. But they had added an Aboriginal character to it that sat on the sideline, that was giving the narrative of what was actually happening in Aboriginal affairs at the time over that period. And I know they had to get permission from the trust that owns the book because the author's passed away. And I kind of sat there sometimes looking at it going, I really loved it because it was very educative for some of the audience that may not have understood Aboriginal history. And it was recorded, the play itself was done on the Sydney Harbour, and the play itself is about the Sydney Harbour as well. But the other part of me was going, that character didn't advance that storyline at all, and the character never really interacted with any of the other characters to make the story any different, but they were telling like a secondary story at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of weird. I didn't know whether I liked it or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think we're in a period where everything's at the moment kind of trial and error, because not a bad thing, sorry. It's just we've put our hands up and said, you need to consult with us. We would like to be a part of this process. And I think we may at some point stretch ourselves thin, because again, not enough of us are in those spaces. And the ones that have like 10 projects at once going, and like I said, they're just burnout is real. And I think writers these days, they're trying to do their due diligence, but it's, I don't know. You got playwrights like, what's her name? Something of the working class, Be Afraid of the Working Class.
Oh, yes.
Neil's or something?
Yeah, yes, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Like, her plays are so gritty and very Australian, and I think that's maybe, that's just my style of plays I like to see, where it has this sense of like the reality of people who live from paycheck to paycheck, and the conversations are just so, you've heard these arguments on a train, all these stories. And that's, I think I'm more into what's realistic. Do you have an outside looking in view of the community, or do you have a relationship with the community that you can incorporate? Well, not incorporate, but just acknowledge. And it's about capacity building. What's your long-term thing here?
A question I ask all my guests is that if I had $1 zillion and a magic wand and said, you can do whatever you want to try to fix something in Aboriginal affairs, where would you start?
We went to Canada, to Winnipeg, and we went to a reserve. And the way it was set up and the way that they had made their own money and everything, everyone was at peace, and again, if these remote communities, they're on places that have so much land. And so with the Native Americans and how they worked, it was like they didn't put houses right next to each other. They were all a kilometre apart down this huge road. And then they had a hub in the middle where people can practice culture, tradition, a communal space for everyone. But it was just, and a part of their treaties is if you live on the reserve, you don't pay taxes, and everyone owns their own home. Their way of income, they had to, over generations, teach their kids how to be carpenters, electricians, all this stuff to maintain the community. But outside, if you work outside the reserve, you got to pay taxes. Fine. But if you're on the reserve, you're sort of self-sufficient. And it just felt and they had their own schools, their own AMSs, Aboriginal Medical Services, and it was just like they didn't need to contribute to that outside world. They were just happy here. And by strategically placing properties so far away from each other, you weren't disrupted by the neighbours, and you could have your peace, I guess, because, peace is very hard to come by in living in cities.
Yeah, especially with your neighbours like above you or on the other side of the wall, just there.
Yeah,
being a kilometre away is different. I actually like that. I don't think anyone's ever expressed that before, but I also loved how you explained how you've been around the world to actually see things that other people may not have seen. So I know you said you did a lot of travelling. Where have you travelled to, and where have you loved the most?
Ooh. So there's a concept I've called liberating myself from society's expectations of me, which is I could be at a family dinner on the train ride home. I've booked my flight 4 hours from now to somewhere in the world off of a shoestring budget because my mindset is so much more better struggling in another country than it is struggling in my own country.
Makes sense.
Right? And places like Thailand and Bali and all, like, they're just incredible. They're always busy. Food is really cheap. There's culture. There's things to do. Like, they're incredible places, to visit. The people are lovely. And so I think, out of all the places I've been to, I think Thailand was probably the most just stress-free environment I've ever been in.
Yeah.
Bacon and egg sandwich toast in the morning was $3. And money was just not an issue. Like, you didn't have to think about it because you could get by on $200 for the week,
Yeah. Awesome. I'm just watching the time because I've got a final question for you, and that is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
I think what I said at the start, which is uni is not going to run away, but your youth will. And you need to fulfill your youth. What triggered me to go down that path was being 18, working in mining and construction around a bunch of old people who continuously told me that if they could live their life again, they wouldn't have had the kids, they wouldn't have had the mortgage. They did what was expected of them and not what they expected of themselves.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but I never wanted to get to a point where I felt like I should have done it. I can say I did do it. It either worked or it didn't, but it was fun.
Yeah. And I think having fun along the way is the most important thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
No one's expecting you to be a CEO before you're 25, unless you're into that crypto gang.
Yeah, which I'm not.
But I think those relationships that you build with random people around the country and the world pay off down the track.
Yeah.
I'm oblivious to that because it was pre-social media, but they really do. Because you did it genuinely. You didn't want anything off of anyone. You were just happy that you were invited to the dinner.
Yeah. Being invited is probably the best. Having fun while you're there is even better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, I want to say thank you for joining me. I do sort of cyber stalk you a little bit, so I do see what you actually do, and I really love the work that you do, man.
Thanks.
So I want to say thank you for joining me on my podcast, and guys, I'll see you at the next podcast, and thanks, Mark, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. You have a beautiful day.